Hi, this is Brianna here at Books&Briars. Today I'm come to you with my second Top 5 Wednesday video. I don't honestly do many of these videos because it's really hard for me to think of 5 books to fit into any of the categories, really. But when I do feel like I have an answer to the topic, I love doing them. The topic this week is your top 5 audiobooks. Now, if I'd done this even just last year, I would have had 2 books. Before 2015, I had listened to 2 audiobooks. And since then, I have discovered that audiobooks are amazing, especially when you have a long commute, and I have about an hour both ways each day that I can spend listening to these audiobooks. So I can get through quite a few of them, which is why in 2015, since maybe April, I have listened to 17 audiobooks. I have a lot to choose from for this week. So all of these books are ones that I have listened to this past year, and I'm not counting the ones I listened to before simply because they were so long ago and I've forgotten a lot about them because I listened to them maybe 3 years ago. But let's just get straight on into it, starting with book number 5. My number 5 audiobook that I listened to is Guilty Pleasures by Laurel K. Hamilton. This is the first book in the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, which is a really popular adult vampire series. I've actually read other books in this series, but I'd never started at the beginning. I think I started at book like 11 or so. So I already had a voice and I already had ideas about what I thought the characters sounded like. So listening to the audiobook and the narrator's voice was really jarring for me. Like, it didn't mesh, and I spent the first maybe hour and a half of this audiobook just sort of trying to get past that, which is why it ranks so low on this list. It was really fun. It was really enjoyable to listen to, so it definitely ranks up in my top 5 of the year. For sure. It was fun. Audiobook number 4 is one that I listened to for class and one that I would recommend listening to over reading, actually. And that is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I listened to this audiobook as narrated by Elijah Wood, which was really funny, actually. Just listening to Elijah Wood try to put on a southern accent. It was adorable. But being able to hear it versus trying to read it, because it is written in a colloquial dialect, it is written in the dialect of the Old South. And it's just really hard you have to read it out loud, really, if you want to get like the full meaning of the sentences. So listening to it on audiobook is just like skipping a step. And I feel like I got a lot more out of it listening to it than I would have if I just read it. Audiobook number 3. I listened to Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. And I am a big fan of the Jurassic Park movies, even though a lot of people say like the first one was good and then it was just like Not a fan of Jurassic World. That movie was terrible. I mean, it had dinosaurs in it and the dinosaurs ate people, so that was cool, but But listening to Jurassic Park as the audiobook, I was enamored of it. And it was just really, again, it was just really fun. And even though there were some parts where I was listening to it, I would maybe zone out occasionally because there's a lot of narration in it. But I would zone out occasionally and then something would happen and I would just be like, wait, what? People were dying, suddenly there was blood and guts and dinosaurs. And it was really fun to listen, and the narrator did a really good job putting like the emotions into some of the voices. This is the one audiobook that I just listened to straight through. It was rather long, like maybe 17 hours, I think. But I was sick one weekend and I just marathoned it. I listened to it the entire weekend and I started on Saturday and finished it on Sunday. And it hooked me. Like, sometimes audiobooks can be hit or miss because if it's a bad narrator, you're gonna hate the book. But this was a great narrator and I wish that I remembered his name. I'll figure out who it is and write his name in the description because he was amazing. even in some of the drier, more straightforward, people trying to be sciencey parts of the book, he made it dynamic and interesting to listen to. So, like 5 stars. That was amazing. Number 2, my most recent finish of audiobooks, and that is Locke and Key by Joe Hill. This one I got for free on Audible during October. There was like I think it was free for like the entire month. I don't think it is anymore, but it was great. This was actually the only book I finished in the month of November, and it hooks you from the very beginning because this one isn't actually told as like someone reading a book to you. This one is an adaptation of a graphic novel. So you get all different people voicing different characters, and there was a narrator who did come over and say like, okay, this is recap, this is what happened, and little bits of narration here and there when it was really difficult to use sound effects to convey what was happening. But they did so many sound effects. Like, so frequently you would just hear like someone rustling papers, or you would hear someone crying, and it was so powerful because it starts off with a really violent scene. Like the very first scene in the very first book is very violent, and I was listening to this as I walked to work, and I was just so shocked because it's jarring, and I don't know any other audiobook that does that. So this one was an amazing listen. It really sucks you in. It was brilliant. I highly recommend it. And that pulls me into my number 1. And I will say that Locke and Key and this book were competing super close for who would just pull ahead a little bit to see who is number 1. And ultimately it came down to how much was I enamored of this story? How much did I need to listen to it beyond my commute? And so this one pulled ahead just a little bit, and that was the audiobook version of The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This was my first Neil Gaiman book, and I am never looking back. Neil Gaiman is amazing. And this one, I think it pulled ahead just a little bit of Locke and Key because not only was it faster to listen to, I got through it a lot faster. I probably listened to it within the span of a week, whereas Locke and Key maybe took me 3 weeks to actually listen to. It was a single narrator, so it didn't have the full cast ensemble production, but this single narrator was like perfect. It was a lot more musical, and it was very emotional. Like, it definitely drew my emotions in a lot more based on the music, and it was really easy to form attachments in The Graveyard Book, where I feel like I was a bit more distant from Locke and Key, and now I feel like I'm just comparing the two. I would highly recommend both of them, so just look into it. Even if you don't really listen to audiobooks, I think these two would be a way to get into it. They both capture your attention and your imagination. Sometimes it can be harder to dive into the imaginary world of a book with an audiobook because you already have someone else's voice and their emotional readings of the lines, and how they read it is being pushed onto you. So sometimes it can be harder to attach yourself to audiobooks than it can be to just reading it for yourself as a physical book. And I definitely did not have that problem with these books. I got very attached very quickly, and they're very amazing. So there you have it, my Top 5 Wednesday Audiobooks edition. These books are amazing, and I'm definitely looking into trying to find more audiobooks, so if you listen to one that you thought was perfection, let me know what it is, because I need more of these in my life. That's all for this video. I hope to see you all next time. Goodbye!